Founders, welcome back to the 0 to 5,000 podcast, where we obsess over the convergence of human potential and business results. Today, our hosts Drew McClure and Jordan Mitchell have another insightful conversation for you. So let's jump right in.
All right, founders, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're joined by the founder of Engagedly, Sri Chellappa. Sri founded Engagedly in 2015 to create a new performance management software that bridges the gap between people and strategy, securing the likes of Experian, Deloitte, Rite Aid, and Upwork as clients. Under his leadership, Engagedly has landed a spot on the 2021 and 2022 Inc. 5000 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Based in St. Louis, Missouri, Sri hosts the People Strategy Leaders podcast and regularly contributes to the Forbes HR Council. Prior to his career in tech, he was also a producer, director, and writer for several films that are broadcasted on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Showtime, and more. So strap in. We are so excited to have Sri on the podcast today, and here to tell us all about his story is Sri himself. So Sri, thank you for being here, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. It's been a pleasure.
Well, as we just took our stab at kind of hearing the background to your story, it sounds like you've had a kind of a diverse career, everything from a writer and producer to now an entrepreneur and founder. Take us a little bit into how you got here today.
You know, I just say curiosity killed the cat, but so far it hasn't killed me yet. It's been really driven by curiosity, right? And I feel like there are so many things that I want to do in life, and they all add up together at some point or the other, right? And I think so. If I were to really go back in my career, I started off as an engineer, and my goal at that point was to be an engineer and build spaceships, to be honest. And obviously, I realized I wasn't that good of an engineer. I really wasn't, and I decided, okay, you know what? I really like people. I like hanging out with people. I like talking to people. I like working with people. So I went into business instead. So I combined my engineering, skills with business skills, and that's where really, has this good mix for me being a tech entrepreneur, because now I understand technology. I've been a software developer in the past, and I worked with a lot of businesses in building out their software strategy when I worked with Big Four back in the day. But there was a part of me that was always curious about, being creative in nature, and that's included. Some as kids, you like to act, you typically like to play act, you like to make stories up. So that part of me never actually went away, even as I grew up. So part of me wanted to do that. So I would take time off from work and write movie scripts and make short films. Eventually, I felt like, hey, maybe I should start making a feature film, and ended up, long story short, making about 7 different feature films over the course of last almost 20 years, 18 years or so. No, I will say I haven't made one in a few years, because Engagedly has taken up all my mental capacity to be creative in any other way. But I do still dabble in creative aspects, because some of the ads, I do some ads for Engagedly. So if you actually go on our YouTube channel, you can see some short, funny ads, kind of like this Geico type of ads, So I wrote some of those and produced some of those too as well. So I can still keep my pulse on being creative while focused on growing Engagedly as a world-class business.
Wow. That feels overwhelming to me, to dabble in writing a film. It's not like writing a blog article or let me try my hand at a 3-minute short, right? What was that like for you to take on a task like that?
It requires really strong discipline and compartmentalization. So one of the things I started doing is I would get up at 5, and the first thing I would do is make coffee and go to my study room and start writing. Don't check my emails. Don't think about anything else. Just start writing, and then make sure you do that for at least 30 minutes to an hour. So it's not a lot of commitment. In theory, it's not, 30 minutes to an hour. Anybody can really realistically do that, but do that on a daily basis, consistently over months and months and months. I think it takes a lot of discipline, and you just have to tell yourself. I had a sticky note in front of my computer that says, discipline, do this today, right? It would remind me in case I want to get up and go do something else. So that's basically how you want to compartmentalize your time. And that's what I did. And then when it was time to make the film, I obviously partner with a lot of people. I'm not that good that I can do all of these things and make a film all by myself. So I had my writing partners who would help me with writing, who can co-write, things of this nature. And then, when it was time to make the film, I would take 3 months off or 2 months off from work completely, right? Completely disconnect myself from work and just focus 100% of my energy on making that film.
Wow.
That's basically how it works. So you have to kind of just figure out your boundaries and your compartmentalization and how you want to break up your day. A day, even though you work in a day, but you really only are really working for 6 to 8 hours for the most part, right? Now, so it's not a time issue; it's an energy issue at that point. It's like,
Yes.
do you still have energy left at the end of the day to do that? Maybe your best creative energy is in the morning. Maybe you focus on that on the morning, and focus your evenings on responding to emails. You figure out what's best for your creative levels, energy. There's a whole book written about that by Daniel Pink called
Daniel
When.
Pink.
Yeah, When. And I read that. I'm like, it makes sense. What I've been doing, without really reading the book, but it's like trying to figure out what's your best activities for that day. And then you do that. For example, on Sundays, I spend a lot of time writing on Sundays, because Sundays I don't really get into a lot of meetings. So I'll actually write a blog. I write for Forbes. I write company memos. I'll write a script actually sometimes for a little animation short I might do for our product. So I might do things like that.
When you're writing, whether it be something for a ad for you all, or back when you were writing a film script, do you start? I know that every writer and creative kind of has a different process, so I'm curious about yours. Do you start with the idea in mind and then kind of feel it out as you write, or is it much more discovery throughout the way? How did you kind of approach that? Do you have the end in mind, things like that before you even begin?
No, I think it starts with a seed of an idea. So, for example, and I know we're talking about movies now for a minute, which I thoroughly enjoy, but hopefully your audience finds that interesting enough as well.
Oh, yeah.
There's a movie called Bad Grandmas that I directed. It's on Prime. I think you can watch it on Prime. And Bad Grandmas was the last film of Florence Henderson before she passed away. For people who don't know Florence Henderson, she was the Brady mom in the Brady Bunch TV series.
Yeah.
And that was her last film before she passed
Wow.
away. So anyway, long story short, what I wanted to get with it. So the Bad Grandmas idea came because I was sitting at my in-laws' place, and my mother-in-law at that time, she and her sisters used to play rummy card games together every Sunday afternoons. And I was just chilling there with my daughter and drifting off, watching TV, probably after a heavy meal or something. And I watched them, and an idea just popped in my head, right? Random idea. If like these old ladies, if they were murderers, nobody would suspect it, right? And that was the seed of the idea. Like, what do I make a movie about that concept? Now, I didn't necessarily have a plot in mind. I didn't know how it's going to end, how it's going to start. It was just a plot in mind. Now, obviously, you laughed, so it's a comedy.
Yeah.
But it's murder, so it's a dark comedy. So that was a genre, right? So now I have a genre because it's a dark comedy, and I knew it's interesting enough that when I stated that idea to anyone, they laughed, right? I'm like, okay, this is a good one. So that's how it started. And then I would write the plot around, and then you start thinking about it when you're driving, you're thinking about it when you're in the shower, you're thinking about it. And then as you get ideas, you start taking notes down, and that's basically how you come up with a concept. And that's how a lot of even product companies and other businesses start. They start with a seed of an idea, and that blooms into something if you stay enough with it, right? So a lot of people abandon their idea, but if you stay with it long enough, and sometimes the idea is not good and you let it go, and that's the right thing to do at that point. Because I've had many story ideas, but I can't dedicate 9 months of writing a script on every single idea that comes to my head. That wouldn't be the most prudent use of my time. So that's basically the concept, and then you write out the plot points, and there's a whole concept of how to write a book. There's of how to write a script. There's actually a book by Sydney. I forgot the last name now. Sydney something. Very famous book on how to write a movie script, and that basically I just followed the script or followed the book, which has a workbook, and it tells you how to go about doing a movie script. But in 3 months, you'll have a movie script written if you stay with it.
Wow. Well, you mentioned you had the seed of the idea pop into your mind. Was it a similar type thing with Engagely? Did you have a seed of the idea pop up, or did it grow slowly over years? Where did the idea for this company come from?
Well, I'll tell you, to be honest, it wasn't my idea. It was my business partner's idea. He had an idea that engagement levels are low in organizations, and what if we build a platform that helps people feel more connected with their work,
Hmm.
with their workmates, and that would help drive engagement. Because if you look at the Gallup Q12, there are many questions there, but one of the questions is, do you have a best friend at work? It drives engagement if you have a best friend at work. Do you feel like your manager cares about you? Do you feel like your ideas are being taken seriously? Those are some of the questions. I'm paraphrasing some of these questions, but those are some of the questions in the Gallup Q12 that drive employee engagement. So we said, let's build a platform that actually address those questions. That's just it, in one way or the other. And if we can, so it's not about measuring engagement; it's about addressing engagement. But if you solve for those questions, then an organization, in theory, should have better engagement. That's the idea that my partner had. I really latched onto it because I worked in a lot of organizations as a consultant. With Big Four, you work with big companies like American Express and Wells Fargo and AT&T and Sprint and all these companies I work with. And one of the things that was very common is you realize how disengaged people actually are. Especially, most of them are there waiting for Friday afternoon so that they can leave work and not have to show up till Monday, or they're depressed on Sunday night because they have to show up on Monday at work on Monday. And it's a shame. If you think about it, we spend our best years, as Americans at least, we spend our best years, our most youthful, high energy years, and our best times of the day in those years at work. So why not make the best out of it, right? You're spending your best moments in your, as a human being in your entire lifespan at work. And to me, that was the motivating factor. Like if Engagely can make a little positive impact in that, I would consider it a success in my life book, if you will.
Absolutely. What have you all found as being the levers that we can pull that move the needle towards better engagement and enjoyment?
Such a simple thing, yet so hard for people to do. I don't know why. Recognition doesn't cost a dime for the most part. As a manager or as a leader, even if you're not leading that person, it takes 30 seconds for you to say, thank you, you did a great job, and I appreciate what you did because it made this impact. That person is happy as a clam for the rest of the day, right? Because they don't get enough of it. Employees don't get enough recognition for what they do. And then if they do enough where they go out of the way to do something, if they do that enough times and they're not getting recognition, they're going to stop doing it. And that's where the disengagement starts. And then they stop doing even the normal stuff, and they're just at that point, phoning it in or punching the clock, as they call it, right? And that costs so much more money than this 30 seconds of gratitude that you can provide to an individual. Yeah. So I would say if there's one thing you can do and that doesn't cost money is publicly acknowledge somebody, and then do it publicly. Do it in a public forum. That's what Engagely has. We have a social feed where you can publicly praise somebody. So in a distributed workforce, like most of the companies have, at least in our space, you can publicly praise somebody, and then everybody gets notified that this person got praised by this person. You can give somebody a virtual badge for things like that. $0, man. Do it.
Yeah.
If there's one thing you do, just do that once a week to one person as a manager.
Wow. Man, that I think that applies much more than just in the workplace, right? And your friends, your family, your kids. Like, we just often feel things that we don't say. We may feel gratitude. We may have moments of feeling like, man, I'm really thankful that this exists. But how often do we go out our way to say it? And like you said, what impact might that have on that person just to hear that celebration, right?
Right. And obviously mean it. Just don't say, hey, thank you, and then walk away, but actually mean it, because you say, hey, this is what I felt because you did this, or this is what our team felt oh, this is what the client felt because you did this, and I appreciate you for doing that. So thank you.
Wow. I love that. What else is on the platform that you all leverage for this engagement?
Well, that is just one aspect of it. I mean, we obviously solve for a lot of other business processes, performance management process, feedback process, things that, coaches like you might use, like a 360 feedback, where
Right.
you're getting feedback from multiple people. So we have a tool for that. We also have OKR and goal setting. But that's another big one, actually, is being transparent about your organizational strategy. And that's by defining your organizational goals. A lot of companies don't do a good job at defining that. They don't say this is our organizational goal and publish that so that other employees can look at that and say, hey, this is what I need to be working towards. So they have a common understanding of what our overall goal is. So they know what their purpose is at work. So I think that we have tools for that. One of the big ones that we have started really building out in the last couple of years is in employee development and growth. We've heard that over and over again the last couple of years, especially the last couple of years, where organizations really want to invest in employee growth, and employees really feel connected, where they feel like the managers and their organization cares about their career and their development and growth. So we're building some tools for that as well, by providing online training, being able to map out their career journey, and then facilitate those discussions with your manager. So those are some of the things in our tool. Our tool is fairly broad. It has like 10 different modules, and it really depends on the organization strategy on which parts you want to focus on in your organization.
I love that. It sounds like you're tapping into a lot of the intrinsic motivators, which are so much more substantial to a human being, right? Simple stuff, like you said, acknowledgement taps that part of me that says, hey, is what I'm doing seen? Is it valuable? The setting of the goals, being transparent with it makes sense, because often we're saying, why am I doing what I'm doing? If I'm going to work this hard, what is it for? What is this going towards, right? A lot of just very intrinsic to the human for why I would keep showing up and why I would give a crap about what I'm doing, right?
Yes. In fact, I used to be in this camp that the whole meaning of life camp, right? What is the meaning of life is to find happiness. And that was the whole camp I was on. I've changed that camp. I've quit that camp, actually. I said the whole meaning of life is driven by purpose. It's the whole goal in life is to find purpose in what you do. Because if you do that, I think it defines your meaning of life, essentially.
Well, let's back up a second. What caused you to quit the happiness camp?
Because I got influenced by Viktor Frankl when he wrote that he wrote that book, and I started reading more about it. I still haven't finished that book, by the way, but I started reading more about it, and then Man's Search for Meaning, right? Which is I think everybody should read it, or at least read the gist of it if they don't want to read the whole book. Happiness is a state of mind, right? You can be happy, you can be unhappy, and it's okay to be unhappy, and that's the thing. If your whole goal in life is to be happy, then unhappiness is a bad thing, and I'm saying that's not true, right? It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be disappointed in yourself sometimes, or in your loved ones, or or even sometimes among your coworkers and your team members, right? It's okay with all of that, but I think what's really makes you move forward, makes you wake up in the morning, is when you have purpose. If you're waking up, and purpose lead to happiness, right? I think it leads to happiness. Instead of finding happiness in a vacuum, trying to find out how do I get happy, is to actually say, how do I find purpose in what I'm doing on a daily basis? And if I have that, then I think happiness automatically is one of the outcomes of that.
Yeah.
And that's just my way of looking at it. I could be wrong, but that's the camp I'm on these days.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm right there with you, man. It feels like the more you directly go at happiness, the more it evades you, right? And then the more that you do the things that could lead to happiness, the more it kind of comes to you. And you mentioned, like, you have to be open-handed that with sadness, with happiness comes sadness, with peace comes anxiety, that we have to be open to accepting the full spectrum of emotions in life, right?
Yes. And I think where people really get really depressed and have feel lost, right? Feeling lost is the worst place to be as a human being, because that's what really drives people to depression and even suicide and other aspects, because they feel defeated and they feel lost. It's because they lost a sense of purpose. If you had purpose, I think you would be less driven to doing those things to yourself and to people around you.
In your opinion, how would you encourage someone to discover or create? And maybe it's, which one do you see it? Do you see it as a discover your purpose, or do you see it as a create your purpose? How, if someone's listening and they feel a little lost right now, how should they go about re-engaging with purpose in their life?
I think you got to go back to your first principles in some ways, to really understand what is motivating you to, if you're at a job, what is motivating you to be in the job? Now, maybe it's not the job. Maybe it's the purpose is so that you can give your child a good education. That's why you're in that job. That's why you're showing up, sweeping the floors, even though you hate it.
Yeah.
Potentially. But if you flip the script and say, this is actually giving me the resources so I can send my kid to the private school that he or she wants to go to, right? Or fund that kid's music lessons or whatever that is, right? Or provide a nicer house than you would otherwise have. I'm just giving an example here on top of my head. But that's if you start looking at it, go to the first principles. The first principle would say that why are you working? It's not because I like sweeping the floors. It's because I have a family I want to feed, or maybe it's just me, a singular person. Maybe it's me because I like to go on my, vacations. Maybe that's the ultimate happiness and purpose that I have, that I enjoy. So this is a way to feed that desire of mine, or that things that fulfills me.
Yeah. What's the purpose that fuels you right now?
My purpose is to really on Engagely side, if my purpose always is to figure out how can I find, at least in my work, how can I find the right place for an individual where they feel motivated and they feel like they are a good fit. So don't, and this is something that Einstein said, you can't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. So don't put a fish in a position where it has to climb a tree. Put a fish in the water where it swims, and put a squirrel where, it needs to climb a tree. So try to find the right positions for right people that drives them, gives me purpose. So making people, because it gives me purpose because it helps Engagely then do better work for its clients, which is to ultimately give people fulfilling lives at work, right? And to me, that gives me purpose on one end. At a personal level, there are things like I like creating. I love the aspect of creating, whether it is creating like movies in the past, or music, which is another thing I'm doing these days, or in Engagely, I'm creating better products, working with different, on my team members, working with clients, solving their problems. So those things really, drive, I would say, my purpose. It's not, to some extent, to a great extent, it's not really driven by money, because that's just the, I would say, collateral benefit of doing all of this, and it enables me to do more of it.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier a little bit of what your day looked like when you were writing a script, and how we can really get strategic with the way that we structure our day. If we've only got 6 to 8 hours, how are we using those hours? What does a day look like for you right now? How are you thinking about structuring your day?
Well, right now it's pretty lopsided because I've been traveling a lot, and but normally in a normal Sri's life, it would start at 5 a.m. Typically, I would get a workout in the morning, and then I would start my day around 6:30 or so. I like to end my day around 3:30 or 4, to be honest. I don't like to go, because my energy levels are shot by then anyway.
Yeah.
And then I take a break. I will read a book or go for a walk. And I have a dog, so I take him for walks twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. And there's typically about half a mile to a mile long walks each time. So it's a nice 20-25 minute walk each time. That helps me just get out of my space.
Yeah.
In the evenings, I just it depends. Sometimes I'm binge watching Netflix, and sometimes I'm just reading a book. Sometimes I'm binge cooking a bunch of stuff, or sometimes I am staying up, making music, or it could be any of it. So I cannot leave the evening kind of just open ended for things that I feel like doing at the time.
Yeah. One of the reasons I'm curious about you is often what we'll hear kind of in the popular conversation around how to be successful in business is this singular obsession that it must consume your entire life. You can't be distracted by anything. You've got to, work 24 hours a day. And not saying that, and maybe you have, not saying that you didn't have maybe in the early years of Engagedly longer hours and that type of stuff, but the fact that you are multi passionate, that you have not just this in your mind, but you also have this creative side and you also have the film and the travel and that kind of stuff. How do you see that working? Right? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like you kind of
Yeah,
seem to go
yeah.
against a little bit of the conventional advice, yet you're still successful.
I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe it is. I do think having other passions help me be a better entrepreneur, because
Yeah.
it gives me ideas and I can be more creative. I can think out of the box. I can take more risk with my ideas. It does help me with that. I do think, also think, there are phases in any company. Sometimes I am working 14-hour days for days on end, and actually that's how it was a few months ago. I was working 14-hour days for several months, except probably the weekends, because we were, in the process of getting our company in a shape where we can do Series A, and we raised Series A last year. And then after that, there was a lot of work, because now we had an investor on the board to get our company really, working as a world class operation. So there was a lot of work on that. The last few months, I've been working quite a bit, but at this point, I feel like I've got my normal mojo back, and so it ebbs and flows.
Mm.
It's like sometimes you're running sprints and sometimes you're just trotting, and I think you just need to learn to pace yourself.
Wow. I love that. Yeah, we call it for a season for a reason, right? That there's no one mode you can be in all the time. You've got to be kind of in tune with, hey, this might be a season we really got to push and kind of go extra hard, and then recognize when we can have a little bit easier pace and kind of
Yes.
enjoy that, right? Well, I love what you talked about too with the kind of the benefit of the different interests you have and how they can coincide. I've worked with some professional athletes before, and I was surprised that many of the most successful ones really find valuable their hobbies and interests outside of the sport. That for a lot of reasons, one, it gives them multiple hats to wear, that you're not just living and dying by this one identity of being an athlete and how'd the game go, right? You're also a husband, or you're also a hunter, or an artist, or whatever. But
Hmm.
two, like you said, some of the cross-functional learning of, hey, what I learned in this discipline over here, I think would really help me in this, pursuit over here. And so I kind of connect with it that way.
That is actually, I completely agree with that. It's not so much, I don't know if you can actually mathematically show why that is, but it does impact you when you step away from something and come back to it. You're actually better, and there's no reason to explain it logically speaking, but your mind is still working and your body is still working,
Yeah.
and it's actually processing everything that you did and learned. Then that you come back to it and you apply for it. For example, music, for sure. I would sometimes practice. I'm a drummer, so I will practice some drum, and I'm not getting it. There's this beat that I was trying to get from Led Zeppelin, which is really, really hard. I could not get it. I stepped away, didn't do that beat for months. Right? I just doing something else. I came back, sat on it, I started playing the beat.
Wow.
And I don't know what happened. Right? It's something just clicked. I was able to play the beat. Now, obviously not as good as John Bonham, but close enough. Close enough. I can at least play the beat. Maybe not at the same cadence and speed that he did. But
Yeah.
so anyway, that was an example. And I there's no. I mean, I've read some studies that help that if you go away, you maybe go to sleep, take a nap. You come back, you actually might be better performing. So I think that might have something to do with being involved with, because if you just do one thing for a continuous period of time, you're not getting better.
Yeah.
You really can't.
You start having diminishing returns.
Yes. And in fact, you might have started having negative returns.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of it you mentioned earlier, which is just the energy that we have at a given time to give to something. If you've just been in that chair, facing that thing, beating your head against the wall over and over again, sometimes it's the energy of getting away and feeling refreshed and then coming back with renewed vigor and energy, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you're not connecting the dots, and you go away, and the dots start connecting, and then you come back, and you can actually, because you can start visualizing it. Sometimes it's hard to visualize while you're doing it. You step away from it, you can visualize it, and then you have a better idea of how to do it. You come back and you do it.
Yeah.
And I think doing a different set of activity helps because it really removes you from thinking about it too much, so that subconsciously your brain is probably still working on it. Like going for long walks, for example, or going on hikes really helps me at least get my head right when I come back to the same activity, because I'm not able to solve the problem. There was this puzzle I couldn't solve. I saw this puzzle. It's like a little puzzle where you have to take the thread out or something, whatever. I found it at a conference. I couldn't solve it. And then I went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30. I went straight to the puzzle and I solved it in like 5 minutes. No good reason, right? And I don't know why. It just happens sometimes.
Yeah. I wish I could remember who I heard this about, but there's some famous, and maybe you know this, some famous writer like Hemingway, maybe it was Hemingway, they would intentionally stop in the middle of a sentence that he was working on so that when he came the next day, he knew where he wanted to pick up. So instead of like, most of us are like, hey, I've got a good idea, I'm not getting up until I'm done. He would intentionally stop midway through an idea because he said the most intimidating part was the next day starting from scratch.
Yes.
And if he stopped in the middle of a sentence, he could come back to it, finish that sentence, and kind of get back in that flow and then go from there for the rest of his writing. Isn't that interesting?
Awesome. That's a great idea. Yeah, I love it.
But that takes discipline. That takes discipline because you're like, no, it's cooking. Like I'm feeling the energy flow and all that kind of stuff. And he had the discipline to stop and go, all right, we'll pick back up here tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. And then actually have to do it next day, right?
Yes. Yeah. But I feel that like as a creative myself, I've written a book, I do speaking, all that kind of stuff. I feel that intimidation, that resistance of the blank page or,
yes,
all right, I made time for it, but am I actually going to do it and overcome all the insecurity and the, I don't feel it today, that kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, you just have to start, and starting is literally is the hardest part. I run a lot of 5Ks, and sometimes like this morning I only went for a mile run, but the first 0.1 mile is the hardest.
Yes.
But I just trudged through it. And then after that, I just wanted to keep running. I actually stopped because I had meetings to come back to, but I could have kept running for a full 5K.
Yeah.
Or longer, but I realized
the first mile
you just
always
start.
sucks.
Or first 1/10 of a mile or first quarter mile.
For me, it's a mile. For me, it literally is. It's the first mile and I think it's you're going from static to in motion. And so it's like waking up the muscles and they're kind of complaining a little bit. And then really the brain keeps going, are we really going to do this? Are we really going to do this?
It's like you talk you out of it. It's like you talk you out of it every second there, So
but for me, it takes a full mile. Maybe I got an extra strong resistance in me. But after the first mile, it's like my brain goes, oh, I guess we're doing this. We might as well enjoy it. And then it starts to get kind of easier,
Right.
But I feel that about anything. That's why I like the Hemingway thing is, hey, at least if you knew where you're going to start, you could get started, get through that rough, the difficult part and just get going. And I would say, for all the businesses we've interviewed on this podcast, it feels similar to that you have an idea, but thousands of people have an idea. How many of them actually get started on it? And then when they get punched in the teeth, keep going and pivot and really work their way through. And so I'm just curious that like you've had to do that over and over again. To get a script out of your computer and be made is a great adventure. To take a idea of a company like Engagedly with your partner, take it from an idea and actually have it be a real product in the marketplace that is growing and thriving is an adventure. What do you think has given you that grit and that resilience to see these things through?
I will say this it's a question I ask myself. Can I live with myself if I quit? right? Did I give it all, right? And if the answer is no, I didn't try, I didn't really give it all, then shame on me, right? I don't know if I can live with that feeling personally, and that's just maybe it's a me thing, or maybe that's what a lot of entrepreneurs are. Like because quitting and then having to face yourself as a quitter in the mirror is a harder feeling to swallow than at least giving it all and maybe even going broke in the process, and at least you can say you tried, you gave it all, at this point, there's no reason to be regretful. Because if you didn't give it all and you quit, then there's this regret, right? And then how do you live up? That's just because you can't erase that. It's going to be there for the rest of your life, that's my way of looking at it, I guess. Now I have quit. When I thought this idea was stupid or it's not going to work.
How do you know? How do you know when? And I know it's not a perfect science, but in your judgment, like what are you looking for that signals to you, I think this is something that is right to quit versus I'm giving up on something that could work and I don't know why I'm quitting, Yeah.
There's an example. So there's another startup that I tried doing. I'll use the word tried because I quit. And it was an e-commerce startup for saying organic and earth-friendly goods and products aimed towards kids, right? So really healthy shampoo and bubble baths and pillowcases that are organic cotton, things of this nature. I realized about 2 to 3 months in that everything I was trying to sell, Amazon also had it. Now, Amazon had 500 other things, varieties of that. I'm like, I can't compete with that. The only way I can compete with that is if I had a lower price or some unique brands that Amazon doesn't carry. And I tried hard to do the deals, but you can't do those deals. In fact, Amazon would prevent the vendors from selling them for any lower price anywhere else. So I couldn't even do that. So at that point, my options really were to quit because I can't compete with Amazon, or at least that's a much bigger hurdle than I'm willing to take, or build my own brand of products. Like Honest, for example, is a great brand, right? That Jessica Alba built. Honest brand. She did that whole thing, and because now it's Jessica Alba and Honest, right? I could do something like that, which is based on me and what I know. And I don't have that expertise, or neither do I have the energy to build that expertise, because I don't really know about organic cotton versus this, I just thought it was a good idea,
Right.
So 6 months in and after thinking about a few, I didn't think a lot, probably $25,000, $30,000 of my own money, which is a lot for some of them, some people, but it's not a whole lot, it's not like life-changing amount of money. I decided to quit because I was like, I couldn't come up with a good pivot to make this work that was worth my effort.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
That was the decision I made.
Makes total sense. And you kind of have to, in those cases, avoid that sunk cost fallacy, that, well, I've already sunk this much money in, like I can't lose it, and go, no, staying in a bad idea is only going to cost you more money if you don't get out when you see the writing on the wall, right?
Yes. That's an example of that. And sometimes you just have to quit because you realize you don't have the talent. I mean, I've quit. I mean, I was in my 20s and I was just like, I'm going to play tennis. I'm going to start playing tennis really well. And I realized I had no way close to talent or some of these people. I'm like, that's the point. I'm just going to do this for fun,
Yes. Yeah. A little dose of realism in there. And that's a fine line. Like, for successful creatives and founders, they walk a fine line between having to be almost crazy optimistic while also being in touch with certain realities, right?
Yes. And I think it requires a good dose of humility, but it also requires extreme optimism at the same time, even though they are seemingly contradictory, right? Because you need to be humble enough to know what your shortcomings are and where you might fail, but have the optimism and the confidence that I can still do this. But have in your brain, you should have some path to get there. blind optimism without any idea of the path to get there is not. That's being stupid. Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And like you said, it's a fine line. It's something that is held in tension, and it's one of those things we have to learn how to embrace both. We got to be okay in the face of doubters, saying, no, I really feel like this can work, while at the same time noticing what you are recognizing as a true weakness of the idea, or a weakness in your skill set that you could find a way to strengthen, right? So that's really cool. I know we're coming up on our time here, so I want to just get into the idea or into the current reality of Engagedly. What is kind of the exciting stuff that you are pursuing right now, and even just at the season of this? How would you characterize the season the company's in right now?
The season is an exciting time to be honest, and I'm not just saying that. I actually mean it, because and you've probably been hearing this so much that it's going to be like, oh no, one more company that's doing it. It's OpenAI, right?
Yeah.
We started using OpenAI in our platform, OpenAI based tools. So we built our own layer on top where we can use large language models to train our system and the OpenAI based system. Because earlier, you had to build your own AI, and that's a lot of effort and work, and it's not as good as some of these people who have lived their life building AI tools, right? And for us, which is an HR tech software company, to say, okay, we're going to be an AI platform, it's a hard uplift. But the fact that OpenAI opened up its AI APIs late last year really opened the doors for a lot of innovation that we can do to serve our constituents, which is the employees, managers, and the HR leaders. And now I can surface talent, skills to the management, right? I can give you ideas based on this behavior. Maybe you should learn this, right? I can be more prescriptive. I can provide some recommendation. I can help, like the recognition I was talking about at the beginning of this podcast. I can help managers say, hey, manager, you have not recognized, individuals A, B, and C in your team, even though they've achieved their goals consistently 3 quarters in a row.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying, I can hard code that, but AI can probably figure that out, that you have not done that, and then give a nudge. Hey, maybe you should go and recognize this employee, things like that, where systems can be smart and you're assisting managers and employees to be better, and organizations to be better as well. So those are things I'm really excited about. Building that layer where the system can be smart enough to give you recommendations, give you ideas, so that the workforce feels more fulfilled. They have ideas. They can work better together. For example, personality traits. I can probably get. That's why one of the things I was talking about, assessments, for example. If you get assessments in, I can probably use the platform to build. Hey, this is a better team if you put these people together, because their personality traits actually complement each other, right? Versus these people who might end up fighting among each other. I don't know. I'm just making that up. But those are some of the examples of how I can build high-performing, better-performing, more fulfilling teams and workforce.
Heck yeah. I love that. All right, my friend, if someone is listening right now and they'd like to check out your software and your services, where should we send them?
Well, it's engagedly.com. Engaged, ENGAGEDLY. Engagedly.com is the product. They can learn more about me, Sri Chellappa. I'm frequently posting on LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect with me as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, sharing your story, your passions, your interests. Man, this has been truly fun and inspiring to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Drew. It's been a pleasure.
Founders, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hop into our monthly founder email so we can ensure you stay on the edge of peak performance and massive business results.